We would now like to invite our very own Mithali Chauhan, Director General of MRSI, on stage. Mithali has been working since before I was even born, with an experience of more than 35 years in the market research industry. Though, when you interact with her, you'll find her to be one of the youngest people at heart. Apart from agency and client side roles, she has been pivotal in steering MRSI reach greater heights every year. Over the last 4 years, her contribution across GK awards, bigger and better annual seminars, launch of the industry sizing reports, to name a few, are some things that we all remember. Additionally, she is also a modern arts historian. Mithali will now share excerpts from their hugely appreciated webinar titled The Rise of Gen Z: How to Innovate and Drive Consumption. Welcome, Mithali, and over to you.
Thank you. Subbu's a really, really tough act to follow and such an amazing, inspiring session. But I think this session is also pretty inspiring. And I think what's exciting about this is the Wednesday webinars is something that MRSI does every month. We're in our sixth season, so it's the sixth year we're doing it. It's not about competing. It's not about winning or losing. It's about people from different organizations getting together, having a fantastic laugh, having a good time, and the entire industry in India and abroad learning from them. So this season, season 6, I have the current committee. It's led by Amitabh Mishra, supported by Sunder Muthuraman, with Mukul, Samir, and Jayesh, who drive the committee. I think they're the hardest working committee, quite honestly, that we have, because every month without fail, they curate topics, they vet the speakers, they drive the content, and they go through this, hours and hours of work to get you what you see. One of our chart toppers this season is the topic you have today, which is the rise of Gen Z. It was a topper in terms of the number of people that attended live, in terms of the number of catch-ups on YouTube, and also in terms of the press coverage that we got for it. And I think for a lot of you who talk about the raised profile of MRSI, I think this is a great token of it. We are present in the press because what we're doing is relevant and we're saying it best. And I think that's something that we're tremendously proud of. Let me share with you just a little bit of a teaser of the vibe that goes on. This is just a minute clip. Can you play this clip, please? Should I do it from here?
Vein, question to you, Anjana, is that would I be Gen Z if I think non-linearly about getting fitter, right? I'm saying, I'm going to wait and say, you know what, I could perhaps exercise, I could get to the gym, or I could cycle, and think, automatically things are going to happen. Would that make me Gen Z?
No, but let me answer the question a little more seriously. I know it was a joke, but non-linearity, I think so. There is an important principle for us to think about, particularly when we look at Gen Z in the workplace, right? When you look at Gen Z in the workplace, if their imagination of career is not so linear, how can employer brands create non-linearity and exponential growth possibilities for Gen Z is an important one for us to consider. Are we designing our workplaces in the old world context for them is something. And I'm glad you spoke about linearity, even if it were as a joke, because I think it's an important principle for many of us to consider, to speak to them sharply. And I don't think you'll be Gen Z. I don't think you'll be Gen Z.
Yeah, so I think that just gives you a kind of flavor of the kind of discussions that we have. I'll quickly share with you the contributors.
On a lighter vein,
no.
Question.
Okay. Yeah, these were the 4 panelists who were there with us. We had Aditya from Kantar, who started off with TGI data that was hugely insightful to understand how Gen Z is different from other generations before them. We had Anjana, who talked about zooming in on Gen Z and who they are and why they are who they are. We had Mukul from Purple Audacity, who talked more about Gen Z in depth. And we ended with Ashwini, who busted all the myths that have been floating around on Gen Z. Without further ado, I would like to welcome on stage 3 of our panelists who are with us today. I had a 6-minute clip, but I think after Subbu's session, and we're a little behind time, I think let's start off straight with hearing it from the actual panelists. So if we can have Anjana, Ashwini, and Mukul on stage. And please do not miss the entire session. It was 40 minutes. It had fantastic insights. It had great questions that we shared live. And at any time, you can go on to our website and you can catch up on what the view was.
So, hi everyone, and thanks Mithali for that introduction. So I think the seminar happened a few months back, and I must say that we had a really great experience with the seminar. And this was primarily because of 3 reasons. One was, of course, the topic itself. While much has been, written about the topic, it's something which is very close to our hearts. And there were a lot of, new nuances as well as myths which got busted during the session. The second was, of course, you saw some of the, camaraderie which was there. And while there were like 4 competitors, we all worked together and we all worked as, one team, trying to help each other out and, designing the session to make sure that we're trying to give the best to the audience per se. And of course, the fact, that this was again, something which the content itself was fairly rich. I was part of it, so it's a little odd for me to be saying that, but I did think that there were a variety of perspectives which were there. And while there was convergence, because all of us had, certain points which were very common, at the same time, there were some interesting and different points of view also which came across. So that was my experience. I'm also supposed to be moderating the sessions. So, Mukul, what about you? How was the experience for you? I know you were the one who actually thought of this topic when you had reached out to us. So how was the whole experience? You're a veteran at this. Tell us a little bit more.
Not really. My experience about this entire bit was that when we were discussing it in the Wednesday webinar committee, I remember like we kept discussing it and kept deferring it. And then we kept discussing and kept deferring it. And then we got a chance and we really sort of took off in terms of what about Gen Z should we really cover. And that is actually the most, that is actually really the essence of the entire bit. That there is Gen Z as a cohort is the one cohort that I think we've spent so much time investing time, energy, space, so much of noise around this is Gen Z, that is Gen Z, Gen Z thinks like this, Gen Z does like this. We do a lot of, we keep sort of slicing and dicing and try to really understand what Gen Z is. But then we try to get a panel of speakers and then we try to cover a few things where we said that we are going to try and look at Gen Z not from just what they do, and primarily not what they do online, but also stepping back and really understanding who is this Gen Z as an individual, or Gen Z as people. Because I think many a times we just slice and dice actions that they do, and primarily actions that they're doing online.
Yeah.
And beyond that, we don't really get into the space of understanding what is the individual behind it. So the intent was that, and I think we deliberately had multiple sort of perspectives coming in, which was really sort of queuing into that. And while you talked about the myths, and Anjana was talking about the entire, and Anjana and I primarily were really talking about what makes Gen Z what they are. So it really was very good from a point of view that we were focusing on what is behind these actions, who are they as individuals.
I think that was an interesting perspective that, we really went back and spoke about who this person is rather than, focusing on the actions or what they're actually doing. Anjana, how was your experience?
Well, I just want to say that, we were a bunch of people running a webinar on Gen Z. And as you can see, none of us are Gen Z, right? So it was quite interesting because I think a lot of the myths got busted for us. I mean, think about this generation. The oldest of them would be in the mid-20s, which means that for the next 20 years, they're going to be key consumption audiences. They're also going to be key creators of consumption, right? They're going to be a big part of our workforce for the next many, many, many years. And I think that when an older generation comes in to observe them and think about them, there is a tendency to think that, oh no, they're entitled, they're lazy, or, they're not really committed to work, etc. I feel that a lot of that is because we don't understand their context and where they come from. The fact that, we all talk about the fact that they have poor attention spans. Is that true, or is it really like a sophisticated decision-making filter? Because they have so many choices and so many good choices. So how do they make the most of those good choices? I feel that they're probably, the most misunderstood generation. Yeah. They come with a lot of really great things that they can teach us. And I feel that sometimes it's our generational bias and also some kind of a declinism bias that makes us very comfortable in the realization that, our generation was the generation. It's all going downhill from there. But that's not true. I just feel like, a lot of the myths, a lot of the, general broad strokes that we brush this Gen Z with, I think that's, those got busted. And to me, that was really interesting. I also got to understand my Gen Z children a little better through the process. So, yeah, it was great for me.
Yeah. I think we had a lot of, interesting participation from the audience itself. And to come back to, the myths, I think some of the interesting things which you also spoke about was how this generation is actually very misunderstood. And everybody believes that, they're lazy, their attention spans are low, they're not focused. But in reality, we find that, it's a little bit different. I think another thing which was interesting and which Subbu also spoke about during his conversation was this Generation P, which I thought was like a very interesting, angle around purpose. I think one thing which we noticed in all the work that we do with the Gen Z per se, is that purpose has to be, genuine. It needs to be something which is authentic, and just doing something for the sake of, getting brownie points is not going to work with this generation. But again, and also it needs to be something which they genuinely believe in. Because some research which we did, we found that while climate change, there is so much which is, written about climate change, but actually when the Gen Z feel that they can't really make a difference when it comes to climate change. But issues like gender are something which are very close to their heart. So the kind of issues or the kind of purpose that we actually pick up has to be something which is relevant and, connects to this audience per se. Yeah. What about, we did discuss a lot in terms of implication for marketers. What are the 2 or 3, key things which you think marketers need to be cognizant of, or ensure that, they don't go wrong over there?
All right. I think one of the first things, and I know I'm not going to sound very nice while saying this, because there's been a lot of conversation around AI. There's a lot of conversation around really doing very quick work, really sort of looking at what is happening in real time. Yeah. But I think what we are really missing is spending enough time with them. I don't really think that while we're doing a lot of sort of breaking down into their behaviors online, where they're really slicing and dicing their actions, what are they doing here, what are they doing online, how are they purchasing, what brands are they looking at. While we do all of that, spending a lot of time with them over a period of time and really utilizing the time to understand what are their values. I think the purpose, what they believe in, is something that really stuck with me from the previous session that we were having. What they believe in truly as individuals is something that we don't really have a handle on. Okay. And I think as brands, while we must be in a hurry, there are decisions to be made and other brands to be sort of won over. But what we really need to do is spend time with them, which unfortunately my personal opinion is that I don't think as researchers or as marketers we end up spending a lot of time understanding the person behind it. And if you do that, we've actually understood, and I think...
What stops us from doing that?
I think we end up really doing most of our work to make sure our presentations look very nice.
Okay.
right? We have videos coming in, we want snippets and bites here, we want stories written on different panels that we do work on. Everything is just geared to make our presentations look very good. And but the amount of time that's really required, that okay, this is what this person believes in as an individual, these are the topics that they believe in, as in that this is the, while we just sort of plaster it as saying that oh, there's great amount of irrationality in what they do, there's not so much. Like, I think we're just complicating the generation a bit much, and that's one. And the second bit really is, and I think this sort of extends to every other topic that you study like this, that I think when you're studying Gen Z, organizations should also have a lot of Gen Z people actually making sense of what is coming out. I don't think that we can take the data and as other generations really look at their data and slice and dice and give our perspective on who they are. I think that a lot of Gen Z needs to be the people who are actually making contextual sense of what is really happening.
That's an interesting point of view. What about you, Anjana? What do you think?
You know, to answer your question on, you know, what should marketers do with Gen Z? You know, I think the first thing is if they don't like to be sold to, in the conservative, I mean the traditional sense of the word, then are we even talking to them the right way, right? If they're looking at decisions, if they're taking decisions basis reviews, basis what influencers are saying, is conventional marketing even speaking to them, right? The other thing really is that we speak about gender fluidity, right? Their notions of gender are really fluid. But if you look at marketing efforts, if a lot of our gender depictions are really binary, continue to be binary, then are we really talking to them? I mean, Subbu spoke about this extensively, but this entire conversation on purpose, right? Performative activism, we know, doesn't work with them. They are the first ones to call out any kind of I don't know the right word for it, but lack of authenticity is something that they perceive before anybody else, right? Or the fact of the matter is that their sense of achievement is not rooted in work alone. So a lot of the previous generations drew a lot of their sense of purpose from work. That's not how they are today, right? So I feel that there is a lot that we can do differently to speak to this generation uniquely. I'm not painting all of Gen Z with the same brush. The small town Gen Z is very different from the big city Gen Z, and maybe not enough work has gone into understanding them fully. But I do feel that probably as marketers, because it's the older generations that's marketing to them, we are probably not all there in terms of speaking to them the right way.
Okay. And as you know, market research industry, I mean, we've all spoken about how the Gen Z are very different from the older people who are there. They're digitally savvy. They have low attention spans. So what are the implications which are there for the market research fraternity in terms of the way we do research with them? Is there something specific that you've noticed in terms of what works, what doesn't work?
I think we are habitually we're really in a habit of really finding insights and then trying to see if they can be generalized to behaviors or to people.
Yeah.
I think with Gen Z we need to go super micro. Super micro.
Okay.
Because I think that it's not that okay, we just say that okay, and we know that there are briefs that come in that we want to do studies on Gen Z. Who is Gen Z? I think we need to really break it down into what about them and where, in which space are we really talking about. Like Gen Z when it comes to gaming is going to be a different person. Gen Z when it comes to fashion could be completely different. Gen Z when it comes to activism could be completely different. It's not that there is this one person only and then you just fundamentally understand and then that extends to every aspect of life. Maybe that applied to other generations a lot more. But here, I think from a research standpoint, we need to go slightly micro also, trying to understand that, okay, within this aspect of their lives or within this category, who is Gen Z? What is it? What is it that they're doing? Why is it that they're doing this? So I think that's one thing that's really stuck out to me, that we should go super micro and not try to really understand everything about them in just one research or just in a couple of researches.
Yeah, So in terms of researching the Gen Z, I feel that I would definitely, so, I mean, this is really obvious, but I'll definitely look at their digital, footprint. What are they doing there? Because a lot of their aspired identities are digital, right? Some of the other things that I would do to understand Gen Z would also be to understand the Gen Xers, who are their parents, because I feel that the way they've been parented would have a big role in making them who they are. I would look at archetypes, trying to understand what are the archetypes that truly resonate with Gen Z. Another way that you could look at to understand them would be to co-create with them. I feel that you learn a lot more about them when you actually sit down and create stuff with them. Yeah. And so I would actually look at researching them separate. I would also study them in peer cohorts, because we do know that Gen Z is a lot about horizontal conformity and vertical defiance, right? So I would really make it a point to study them in peer cohorts, because I feel that that'll be a useful lens on understanding their value system. Also, I mean, this is a little dicey, but studying them from the point of view of other generations is also interesting. Sometimes it could be a bit skewed, but it's necessary to understand them holistically as well.
I actually just wanted to add, I think the interlinkages point that has been spoken about by Anjana is very important. Looking at it from the generation of others, I think parenting we very rarely really pay attention to, but that is a very, very important attribute to really study. And I don't think it's been studied enough. So from their social circle, from other aspects, I think there's a lot of interlinkages that also need to be studied. And we end up sometimes becoming a little too deductive about them, that okay, how are they shopping? How are they looking at this online? So I think I really second what Jana said. I think that's a very important.
I've also seen that, actually speaking to people who have a large influence on them or who they follow could also be another, useful way. So it could be stand-up comedians who actually pick up, bits and nuances from their life and actually bring it out. Content creators. So you get a slightly more holistic perspective when you actually go to a wider audience instead of speaking only to Gen Z. But I like your point about, also getting a perspective from other generations to see what they feel about Gen Z per se. Of course, we know online methodologies, I mean, certain things, because their comfort with digital itself is so high, hence those kind of methodologies actually work. I think somebody had presented communities. That is another great platform for getting people to, speak and also co-create to that extent. So yeah, I think there is a lot as a market research fraternity that we can do in terms of maybe looking at new ways of researching Gen Z, or speaking to other set of people to get a more wider and holistic kind of perspective. We have 5 minutes for questions. So any questions for the panelists? No questions? Okay. So So thanks to the panelists, and thanks Mithali, wherever you are, for calling us over here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashwini.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful.